Well, let's do a quick example on why it is that you just can't take the asset with the highest internal rate of return and say this is the best one in an exclusive choice context. So what I've done here is I've set you up with two assets. The first asset costs you $10 in period 0, gets you $15 in period 1. The second one gets you $20 in period 0 and gets you $28 in period 1. Now what I've also done here is I've calculated the present worth for you. So all I am doing literally is just going ahead and saying, well, it costs you 10, gets you 15, and these present worth numbers are calculated with a 10% internal rate of return. And so I'm just dividing the benefits that are in period 1 by 1 plus the interest rate. Doing the same thing over here, minus 20, and then here's the 28 that you're receiving in period 1, and that gives you a present worth there of 5.45. So present worth of asset A is 3.63, present worth of asset B is 5.45. And because you know that under the present worth exclusive choice criteria, you're supposed to pick the big one. So what you're seeing is that asset B is clearly the asset you're supposed to get in an exclusive choice context. However, if you take a look at the internal rates of return on these two assets, asset B does not have the highest internal rate of return. That's asset A. And so what we can do is to calculate in longhand what the internal rate of return of asset A is. We first go ahead and set up our present worth equation. And we say, well, here's our 10 that's right there. And we also have a benefit of 15, which is a period in the future. To calculate internal rate of return, you set this equal to 0, and then what you do is you solve for the interest rate. And so all I'm doing then is moving the 10 over to the other side. And then I'm just going to do a little cross multiply magic here and bring it so that the 15 is over here, the 10 is over here. What I have over here is 1 plus the interest rate. Now, normally the full rest of the equation, you go ahead and raise this to the power of 1 on n, which is over here. We don't have to do that. And what we're going to find out is that the interest rate on this thing here is 50%. So the internal rate of return here is 50%. Now the internal rate of return on this asset over here, if you follow a similar procedure, is 40%. You can think of this simply as 28 on 20 raised to the power of 1 on 1 less 1. And that's supposed to give you the internal rate of return of asset B. So please note that asset A has the highest internal rate of return, but it's not the best choice in the exclusive sense. Internal rate of return is the greatest benefit per dollar. Present worth tells you about the greatest benefit per each, and that's the one you're supposed to be looking at here. The way to think about it, however, in a exclusive choice internal rate of return sense, is to look at the benefits of upgrading. So for example, we can note that both of these here have internal rates of return that are greater than the minimum acceptable. What we have to spot is it makes sense to start with something small and then upgrade to the other. And here's where we end up with the concept of the incremental internal rate of return. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create the difference between these two assets. And so literally I'm taking every element of B and subtracting from it the element of A. So we're seeing effectively that to upgrade from A to B, we have to make an additional $10 deposit or have additional cost. And when we upgrade from A to B, we get some extra benefits that are right here. And so what we're looking at is an extra, what is that, 13? So here's the additional cost incurred in upgrading. Here's the additional benefit incurred in upgrading. And if you look at this internal rate of return, this incremental internal rate of return, you see that it is a 30% rate of return on your money. Now the logic is that you may purchase A, but you're trying to figure out what to do with this extra 10 bucks. Does it make sense to upgrade to B, or does it make sense to leave it into the internal rate of return account, minimum acceptable rate of return account? Well, you know that the internal rate of return on your additional investment is 30%. When you compare that to your minimum acceptable rate of return account, this looks like a really good investment, and so you do. So we're going to do an extension of this procedure where you start looking at this internal rate of returns in the next video.